Well, good morning. This is the Reverend Dr. William L. Johnson III with our morning meditation. I am happy to share this message with you, hoping that you will find it encouraging and inspiring along the way. We don't know what we'll face during the course of our lives, but we do know that as much as we share with each other, that we support each other, that we're there for each other, we can make it through. So these messages are intended just for that fact, to encourage anyone and everyone as you're operating in life and you're trying to figure it out, that you're not alone, but you have support from your friends. An old song used to say, we get by with a little help from our friends. And I want to add that these moments that we have are inspiring to me to be able to share with you. As you receive them, we hope that you'll share them with someone else. Well, our morning meditation today is entitled Our Little Lives, Our Big Problems. Our little lives, our big problems. Today's meditation comes to us in the face of challenges that we see all around. And as often as those of us have gathered in life, in our own interactions with other people, in our respective neighborhoods, our respective communities, in our faith communities, in our pursuit of our own goals, all of us have found that life does not always move at a steady stream, but sometimes life comes with pitfalls, yield signs, stop lights. Sometimes we are deterred from life almost like in the old game of Monopoly. As soon as you think you're on a roll, and then you might find yourself landing right in jail, or finding yourself having to pay out more than you need to, or finding yourself at a crossroad in life where the punches keep on coming and you don't quite know how to navigate your way out. Whatever your life circumstance may be, whether it be up or down, whether it looks like you're in the in crowd or sometimes put on the island of Patmos, maybe you might find yourself among friends, or even, dare I say, in your faith community, your church, your synagogue, your temple, whatever it may be, you might be feeling the tension that is so prevalent in this world. This world has tensions building on us from every quarter and in every place. No matter where you go, no matter what you see, as soon as you think and you feel like things are going well, there's always seemingly something that pulls you back and makes you grind a little more to find your way. Well, today's morning meditation is about forming that, taking a time to really frame that. That's what I should say, framing our little lives and our big problems. Not long ago, I was in a patient's room. I serve as a chaplain in the hospital here in Christian Hospital. And in my interactions with family and with the patient, I discovered that the news that they received was pretty big. It was difficult to get around. There's no way that life could go on the way it had. And so I learned just from that experience and many others, really, that sometimes life events and life circumstances make it so that there's no room for a detour, no room for you to get around it. Someone would say you can't get over it, you can't get around it, you can't get under it, and you can't even run away from it. Sometimes you have to face obstacles that seem larger than life. And when you look at the obstacles, the challenges in your life, you look at the difficulties that you face, sometimes you look at your life and say, look at my little life and look how big my problems are. The problems are many and they're huge. And you don't see the resources, you don't see the help, you don't see the tools, you don't have the strength, you don't have the courage, and frankly, you just don't have the time to wrestle with the challenges that you face even now. But here's the message that I wanted to leave with you. This message came to me from a reading of a poem, or should I say, a prayer by Howard Thurman put in the form of a poem. And he calls it, indeed, Our Little Lives, Our Big Problems. His prayer begins by saying, God, we place our little lives and our big problems at your altar, in your presence. We don't know what to do with them. We don't know how to handle them. And I want to encourage anyone that's here listening, if you're at that place when you feel too little to fight the big battles and you know that you don't have the strength to do it, I want to encourage you not to try to do it on your own. I am one of a person of faith, and I believe that you bring those things to the one who created you. Bring it to God and lay them before God, our little lives and our big problems. God knows that who we are. God knows how big the problem is, and God always seemingly has something that we don't see nor do we know as a result or as a solution to the problems that we face. So here is what Howard Thurman offers us, and I am glad to be able to share with you. He says something like this, and I'll leave it at that. I'm not going to read the poem. You can read it on your own if you can look it up at your own discretion. He reminds us that when we get to that point when our lives seem little and our problems seem big, that we are often thrown in this place, almost like an abyss, that we are not quite sure how to handle them. In other words, we don't know how to do what we know to do, and we don't know how to be what we know to be. I know that sounds like a riddle, but it's fascinating to me that when I found myself at a crossroad, it makes it difficult for me to do what I know to do and to be what I know I am to be. But when you're faced with challenges and difficulties and problems that seem so big, it makes us feel like there's no way we could possibly overcome them. It is at that moment, my friends, that we sit down and we settle down to bring God our problems and to let God show us that God may see us in a way that we didn't see ourselves, and God sees our problems in a way that we didn't see them either. So let me share with you these things I think are important. That when we have to take the time to bring God the things that are before us, we have to be prepared for the change or the transformation that is about to come. When the problems are big and we feel like we're small, what we have to do is be prepared for the changes that come when we bring those things and lay them before God at the altar. I don't know who this is for, and I'm not aware of all the challenges that you face, but I hope that you can hear the words that I'm saying here. Be prepared for the changes. And those changes may come in the form of many things. It may come in the form of a shock. In other words, when you bring before God, your creator, or the one in whom you trust and believe, you might discover that when you feel little and your problems feel big, sometimes God brings in something that will shock you, shock your problem, shock the circumstances, change the game. God knows how to rattle the earth around us in order to show us that whatever the problem is not as big as God. That's an important part. The shock sometimes will throw us off of our rhythm, reminding us that what we were and how we acted and our old behaviors no longer will meet the need of the day. And the shock puts us in a place where we have to respond to it. As I said, when you reach the place where you're too little, your lives are too little for the problems that are too big, then God sometimes uses the shock of a moment to remind us that the problems aren't as big as they seem and we're not as small as we think. I also want to share that I think that God sometimes uses a device sort of like lifting. So be prepared for the lift. In other words, there are moments in life where the problems are big and we're small, and we are not recognizing that we can't do it, but God will raise us above the problem. In other words, we will not be in the position of having to fight, nor will we have to wrestle with it, but God will lift us above it. We will transcend the problem. In other words, I've lived my life, I'm sure you have. There are things that you said, well, I got to deal with this. I don't know how I will deal with it. And before you knew it, a blink of the eye, you went to bed at night and woke up the next morning, and the problem was there, but you have no longer in the position where you have to deal with it. It has been removed, or you've been removed from it. And it doesn't mean that the circumstances are not there. It's just that whatever happened in your life, you've been lifted out of that circumstance. That's what I want to encourage you. When you take your yourself to God and you say, God, the problems are big and I'm small, God knows how to elevate you and lift you up above the problem. Now, if I were in church, I would say, can I get a witness right there? Somebody ought to hear me. But I want to make sure that you're getting this message. I want you to hear these words. I think they are speaking specifically for someone that I'm sharing this message with. This is important that when you start to lay the concerns of your life before God, that you're too small, too little, and the problems are too big, it is the first step to getting the most help that you've ever had in your life. God, I can't fight this battle, but I know you can. I can't lift this burden, but I know you will. And what you discover is God will use shock and lifting. And what I will also say, as the last part of this little part to set us up, is that God will also use the device of release. In other words, God will just allow you to let it go. Now, I know that's kind of difficult for those of us who feel like we're stuck and we have to wrestle with the challenges that are there. But when you put it at the altar, as Howard Thurman says, lay it at the altar, at the feet of God. Their old hymn used to say, "Is your all on the altar of sacrifice laid? Your heart does the Spirit control. You can only be blessed and have peace and sweet rest when your all on the altar is laid." In other words, laying the issues of your life, whether it's your family, your children, your spouse, your mom, your dad, your job, your own health, your finances, whatever's happening in your community, what's happening in your faith community, what's happening in your church, your synagogue, your temple, what's happening in your community, what's happening in the state, what's happening in the nation, what's happening in the world. If you lay it at the feet of God or at the altar of God, be prepared for God to either shake it, be prepared for God to either lift it, or be prepared for God to release it or call you to release it. There are some things you just have to let go of. There's some things that you can't carry. There's some things that you ought not carry. Some burdens that are not yours, that you are not responsible for the outcomes, only about what it is that you put in the moment. In other words, release is a healthy part of living. And it's important for us to really get that in our souls, that it's okay to release it. Yeah, to release it, to let it go. We have all kinds of ways to know that sometimes it's important to let go. It's kind of like the old adage that there is this $1 million that being transported, and the chest falls overboard off of the ship. The person who wants the $1 million may find that they don't want to ever let the $1 million go. And so that they have a choice to make: either die holding on to the $1 million chest that's sinking underwater, because if they don't let it go, they will never live to spend it. Or let go of it and lose the $1 million, but have the chance to live a life separate from the attachments that they've had in life. That sometimes it's that way. Sometimes, my friends, there are moments in which we have to release things. And I would say releasing things that are not just $1 million, or not just a job, or not just a loved one, or not just the love of your life, or not just a career, but sometimes the things you need to release and that are important for your life may be old pains, maybe old hurts, maybe moments in which people have never asked for forgiveness, maybe injury that people inflicted on you, but it left scars that you've not yet healed from. The parts of our lives are important to be able to release. And even in the workplace, or at your church, or in your community, or in your home, or among members of your family, it is time, it is the season to release. When you're so little and the problem's so big, you don't have time to hold on to petty things. It's important to let go of them. And here's what happens when you put it at the altar and you expect God to shock it, or God lifts us beyond it, or God helps us to be able to release. These are the things that we discover along the way, and I can tell you for a fact that they have happened. We discover triumph in defeat. In other words, in a moment where we have lost, we have still won. In moments in which we have lost, we find that we still have gain. In moments in which we have learned and discovered there was hate, we have found love. In other words, these are the things that happen when the problems are too big and we feel really little. When we lay those things before God, God shows us how to win even when it looks like we're losing. God shows us how to gain even though we think we've suffered a loss. And God teaches us how to love even in the midst of hate. This past week, we discovered, and I mentioned it a week or so ago, that there's this terrible act, an incident in Athens, Tennessee. And there we discovered that it was more troubling than we thought. A terrible fire that took the life of one of the members of the church ends up being now a crime committed or believed to be allegedly committed by an individual who went into the church and harmed the individual, taking her life and then setting the church on fire. Well, how horrible that is. What does a community do with that kind of experience when we feel so little and our problems feel so big? What kind of response should her family have when they feel like they could not protect her while she was in the most sacred place that she could have been in? These are the moments in which we have found ourselves to not feel troubled and abandoned completely, but to take our little lives and place them in the presence of a God, and take our big problems and place them in the presence of a God, to discover that in the midst of all of that, God still hears our concern and knows our hearts. So here is the lesson that I want to share with you, and I think it's important that in these moments, whatever your circumstance may be, take your little life and line them up beside your big problems and leave them at the altar of a God who loves you. And somehow, God can take those things, shock everyone in the world around those things, lift us beyond those things, release us from those things, and give us these very important moments to reflect on. We can discover in the midst of everything that we have, though feeling defeated, still triumph. Though we may find ourselves losing, still gain. And though we might find ourselves in the midst of hatred, we can still love. My friends, as a person of faith, that's what my faith brings to me. That in the midst of all that there is, as a follower of Christ, as one who serves that faith tradition, it is a reminder to me that it is always possible to take our little lives and give God our big problems and discover a transformation of them all. So I don't know about you. I can't profess to know about your faith tradition, and I won't try. But I hope this message is encouraging to you, because I know that there are moments in life, just being human, whatever our faith tradition is, whatever our background is, whatever our lives bring us, whatever our culture is, we all come to a place where life seems to be filled with moments in which we feel little and our problems feel big. But in those moments, we want you to know that you're loved, you're appreciated, and you're irreplaceable. And there's a possibility for things to be transformed right before our eyes. Don't give up on it just because it feels overwhelming. And don't give up on yourself just because you don't feel like you have the strength. Be encouraged as we journey along. And as maybe somebody that you walk by today may be feeling like this message is right for them, that somehow they're feeling like their lives are dealing with big problems and their lives are really small to deal with them. Encourage them and tell them you'll get by. You'll get by. In fact, you'll do more than get by. You'll thrive and not just survive. Anyway, that's our message for today. I hope that it encourages you and empowers you along the way. I trust that as we live these lives together, that you'll be encouraged. So bless you today. I hope you have a great day, a great week, and yes, a great life. It's the one life we're given. Let's live it. the best way we can. Take care.